Tanzania is one of the oldest, continuously inhabited areas on Earth. Fossil remains of humans and hominids date back to the Quaternary period. Olduvai Gorge, in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, displays a collection of tool remains that document the development and use of transitional technologies. The indigenous people of Eastern Africa are thought to be the Hadza and Sandawe, linguistically isolated hunter-gatherers of Tanzania. The first wave of migration was by speakers of Southern Cushitic languages, who moved south from Ethiopia and Somalia into Tanzania. They are the ancestors of the Irakabu, Gorowa, and Burunge peoples. Based on linguistic evidence, there may also have been two movements of East Cushitic people into Tanzania, about 4,000 and 2,000 years ago, originating north of Lake Turkana. Archaeological evidence supports the conclusion that the southern Nilotes, including the Datug, moved south from the present-day South Sudan, Ethiopia, border region into north-central Tanzania between 2,900 and 2,400 years ago. This movement occurred at approximately the same time as the settlement of the Mashariki, Bantu iron workers from West Africa in the Lake Victoria and Lake Tanganyika regions. They brought with them West African farming traditions and the staple food of the yam. They then migrated out of this region into the rest of Tanzania between 2,300 and 1,700 years ago. The Eastern Nilotic peoples, including the Maasai, represent the most recent migration from present-day South Sudan in the last 500 to 1,500 years. Tanzanian peoples have been associated with iron and steel production. The Peri people are the primary producers of iron, which is much sought after by the peoples who occupy the mountainous areas of northeastern Tanzania. The Haya people on the west coast of Lake Victoria invented a type of blast furnace that allowed them to forge carbon steel at temperatures exceeding 1,180 dendi, more than 500 years ago. Travelers and traders from the Persian Gulf and India had visited the east coast of Africa since the early 1st millennium AD. Islam had been practiced by some people on the Swahili coast since the 8th or 9th century AD, medieval. Bantu-speaking people established agricultural and trading villages along the coast of Tanzania from the early 1st millennium AD. Archaeological finds at Fukutani, on the northwest coast of Zanzibar, indicate the presence of a settled farming and fishing community by the 6th century AD at the latest. Numerous remains have been found of wooden buildings, shell beadwork, bead grinders, and iron slag at the site. There is limited evidence of long-distance trade. A small quantity of imported pottery has been found, mostly from the Gulf and dating from the 5th to 8th centuries. Similarities with contemporary sites such as Mokokotoni and Dar es Salaam suggest a unified community that developed into the first coastal maritime cultural center. Towns. The coast appears to have been involved in trade in the Indian Ocean and inland Africa during this early period. Trade increased rapidly in importance and quantity from the mid-8th century, and by the late 10th century, Zanzibar had become one of the central Swahili trading cities. The growth of Egyptian and Persian shipping from the Red Sea and Persian Gulf revitalized Indian Ocean trade, especially after the Fatimid Caliphate moved to Fustat, Cairo. Swahili farmers established increasingly dense settlements to conduct trade, forming the earliest Swahili city-states. The Vendashona kingdoms of Mapungubwe and Zimbabwe in South Africa and Zimbabwe, respectively, became major gold producers during the same period. Economic, social, and religious power increasingly came into the hands of Kilwa, the principal medieval city-state of Tanzania. Kilwa controlled a series of small ports stretching into modern Mozambique. Sofala became a major gold emporium, and Kilwa grew wealthy from its trade, located at the southern end of the Indian Ocean Range. Kilwa's main rivals were to the north, in modern Kenya, Mombasa, and Malindi. Kilwa remained a major power in East Africa until the arrival of the Portuguese in the late 15th century. Colonial period edit claiming the coastal strip, the Sultan of Oman, Said bin Sultan, moved his capital to Zanzibar City in 1840. During this time, Zanzibar became the center of the slave trade in East Africa. Between 65 and 90% of Zanzibar's Arab Swahili population was enslaved. One of the most notorious slave traders on the East African coast was Tipu Tip, who was the grandson of an African slave. Nyamwezi slave traders operated under the leadership of Masiri and Mirambo. According to Timothy Insole, figures record the export of 18,000 slaves from the Swahili coast during the 19th century, and 769,000 were held on the coast. In the 1890s, slavery was abolished. In 1863, The Holy Spirit Mission established an initial reception and depot center in Zanzibar in 1877, responding to the appeal of Henry Stanley after his Trans-African expedition, and permission granted to Stanley by King Mutesa Wine of Buganda. The Church Missionary Society sent missionaries Edward Baxter and Henry Cole to establish missions inland. In 1885, Germany conquered what is now Tanzania, except Zanzibar, and incorporated it into German East Africa, GEA. The Supreme Council of the Paris Peace Conference in 1919 awarded the entire GEA to Britain on July 7th. May 1919, which was strongly opposed by Belgium, the British Colonial Secretary Alfred Milner and the Belgian Minister Plenipotentiary at the conference, Pierre Oort, then negotiated an Anglo-Belgian agreement on 30th May 1919 under which Britain ceded the northwestern provinces of Rwanda and Urundi to Belgium. The conference's mandates. Commission ratified the agreement on 16 July 1919. The Supreme Council accepted the agreement on 7 August 1919. On 12 July 1919, the Mandates Commission agreed that the small Kionga Triangle south of the Rovuma River would be given to Portuguese Mozambique, which eventually became part of independent Mozambique. The Commission argued that Germany had actually forced the Portuguese to cede the triangle in 1894. The Treaty of Versailles was signed on 28 June 1919, although it did not come into force until 10 January 1920. On that date, the GEA was formally transferred to Britain, Belgium, and Portugal. It was also on that date that Tanganyika became the name of the British territory. In the mid-1920s, Britain imposed a system of indirect rule on Tanzania. The Maji Maji Rebellion, between 1905 and 1907, was a rebellion by several African tribes in German East Africa against the colonial government, particularly over forced labor and deportation of certain tribes. The city was subjected to bloody repression, which combined with famine caused 300,000 deaths among its population. During World War II, approximately 100,000 people from Tanganyika joined the Allied forces and were among the 375,000 Africans who fought with those forces. Tanganyika troops fought in the King's African Rifles during the East African campaign in Somalia and Abyssinia against the Italians, in Madagascar against the Vichy French during the Madagascar campaign, and in Burma against the Japanese during the Burma campaign. Tanganyika was an important source of food during the war, and its export earnings increased significantly compared to the pre-war years of the Great Depression. However, wartime demand led to rising commodity prices and massive inflation in the colony. In 1954, Julius Nyerere transformed the organization into the politically oriented Tanganyika African National Union, TANU. TANU's primary goal was to achieve national sovereignty for Tanganyika. A campaign to enlist new members was launched, and within a year, TANU had become the leading political organization in the country. Nyerere became Minister of British Run Tanganyika in 1960 and continued as Prime Minister when Tanganyika became independent in 1961. Modern era. British rule ended on 9 December 1961. Elizabeth II, who ascended the throne in 1952, continued to reign until the first year of Tanganyika's independence, but now became Queen of Tanganyika, represented by a Governor-General. Tanganyika also joined the British Commonwealth in 1961. On 9 December 1962, Tanganyika became a democratic republic under an executive president. After the Zanzibar Revolution overthrew the Arab dynasty in neighboring Zanzibar, accompanied by the massacre of thousands of Arab Zanzibaris, which had become independent in 1963, the islands were joined to mainland Tanganyika on 26 April 1964. The new country was named the United Republic of Tanganyika and Zanzibar. On 29 October of the same year, the country was renamed the United Republic of Tanzania. Tan is derived from Tanganyika, and Zan from Zanzibar. The unification of the two hitherto separate territories was controversial among many Zanzibaris, even those sympathetic to the revolution, but was accepted by the Nyerere government and the revolutionary government of Zanzibar due to shared values and political goals. With an area of 947,303 square kilometers, 65,756 square miles, Tanzania is the 13th largest country in Africa and the 31st largest in the world, behind Egypt and above Nigeria. It is bordered by Kenya and Uganda to the north, Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the west, and Zambia, Malawi, and Mozambique to the south. Tanzania is located on the east coast of Africa and has a coastline of the Indian Ocean of approximately 1,424 kilometers, 885 miles. The country also includes several offshore islands, including Unguja, Zanzibar, Pemba, and Mafia. The country is home to the highest and lowest points in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro, at 5,895 meters, 19,341 feet above sea level, and the bottom of Lake Tanganyika at 1,471 meters, 4,826 feet below sea level, respectively. Kalambo Falls in the southwestern region of Rukwa is the second highest waterfall in Africa and is located near the southeastern shore of Lake Tanganyika on the Zambian border. Menai Bay Conservation Area is the largest marine protected area in Zanzibar. Tanzania, officially the United Republic of Tanzania, Swahili, Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, English United Republic of Tanzania, is a country in East Africa in the African Great Lakes region. It is bordered by Uganda to the north, Kenya to the northeast, the Indian Ocean to the east, Mozambique and Malawi to the south, Zambia to the southwest, and Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the west. Mount Kilimanjaro, Africa's highest mountain, is located in northeastern Tanzania. According to the 2022 national census, Tanzania has a population of nearly 62 million, making it the most populous country located entirely south of the equator.